I've always liked Christmas, not for the obvious reasons like gifts or decorations, but because everything just slows down. Even if life's chaotic, something about Christmas puts a soft pause on things. The world feels quieter, softer. But that wasn't the case this year. I was 27, single, and heading back home to Vermont with more dread than joy. My last relationship ended just after Halloween, and while it didn't wreck me, it left this lingering emptiness I couldn't shake. I wasn't sad, just stuck. I felt like I was going through the motions, and Christmas didn't seem like it had changed that. My parents live in a tiny town called Maple Brook. One stoplight, a diner with those red leather booths, and a main street that looks like a snow globe during December. I hadn't been back in over a year. Too busy with work, too caught up in trying to make things work with someone who clearly wasn't right for me. So when my mom guilt-tripped me over the phone, "Everyone's asking about you, Tommy," I gave in. I got there late on the 23rd. Snow was falling in that lazy, movie scene kind of way. My mom pulled me into one of her signature bone-crushing hugs. My dad handed me a beer without a word, and I crashed in my old room, still full of band posters and a twin bed that felt way smaller than I remembered. I wasn't expecting anything. Honestly, I figured it would be 5 days of overeating, avoiding awkward neighbor conversations, and counting the hours until I could go back to my apartment. But then, Christmas Eve morning, something happened. I walked into town for coffee like I always used to. It was cold, really cold, and I was juggling my phone, gloves, and a scarf that wouldn't stay wrapped when I accidentally ran into someone, literally. We collided outside the coffee shop, and his hot chocolate went flying across both our jackets. "Oh, shit, sorry," I said, immediately scrambling for napkins from the little stand by the door. He laughed. "No worries. Honestly, this jacket needed some personality anyway." I looked up. He was tall, probably 6 feet 1 inch, with scruffy brown hair peeking out from under a navy beanie. His eyes were this soft gray-blue color, and his smile was easy, unbothered. "You all right?" he asked, offering me one of the napkins I dropped. "Yeah. Sorry again," I said, wiping my coat like it would do anything. "Hot chocolate's the real culprit here," he said. "Should have known better than to carry a cup without a lid." Then he glanced at my coffee. "Let me guess. Black? No sugar?" "Guilty," he nodded. "You seem like the kind of guy who thinks milk ruins the experience." "I prefer to taste the suffering," I deadpanned. He laughed again. "I'm Mason." "Tom." We shook hands like we were in a rom-com or something. His grip was warm despite the freezing weather. He asked if I was local, and I told him I grew up here, just visiting for the holidays. He was in town staying with his sister, who'd moved to Maple Brook a few months ago with her wife and twin toddlers. They needed help with the kids, he said, grinning, and I needed a break from New York. We ended up sitting on the bench outside the cafe, talking over our half-ruined drinks. I couldn't remember the last time a conversation with a stranger felt that natural. He was sharp, funny in a low-key way, and easy to talk to. And maybe it's lame, but I didn't want the moment to end. Then, just as I was about to stand up, he said, "Hey, I'm taking the twins to the Christmas market tonight. If you're around, come with us." "Won't I be a third wheel?" "You won't," he said, and something in the way he said it made my stomach flutter just a little. I didn't expect to be nervous over a Christmas market. But after Mason invited me, I went back home and immediately started overthinking everything, like whether it was weird to change my outfit. I did, twice. I ended up in a black hoodie under my old denim jacket, with a scarf that I hoped looked casually thrown on and not, calculated. The market was set up in the town square like it always was. String lights crisscrossed above, kids ran around with red cheeks and sugar highs, and local vendors were selling everything, from handmade candles to maple fudge. I spotted Mason near the cider cart, holding hands with 2 little girls in matching pink puffer jackets. "There's the hot chocolate destroyer," he grinned when he saw me. "You're lucky I didn't press charges." The girls were his nieces, Lucy and Emma. They were 4, loud, and very curious about whether I liked reindeer, knew how to ice skate, and had ever seen a real elf. Mason just laughed and let them pepper me with questions as we walked from stall to stall. It was chaos, but it was also kind of perfect. Somewhere between sampling cinnamon donuts and getting talked into buying a knit hat by an elderly woman who claimed it brought out my eyes, I realized I wasn't pretending to enjoy myself. I actually was. After a while, the twins got tired, and Mason's sister came to pick them up. "Good luck," she said to Mason with a smirk as she herded the girls into her SUV. "Don't scare him off." I glanced at Mason. That sounded ominous. He shrugged, smiling. "She thinks I'm bad at this stuff." "Stuff?" He looked right at me. "Meeting someone. Being open." I wasn't sure what to say to that. I wasn't even sure this was anything. But there was a beat of silence that felt loaded, and I felt something shift between us. We walked for a bit, just the two of us. The crowd was thinning out, and the music from the speakers was quieter now. Mason stopped by the edge of the square, where the lights were strung up on the trees, casting a soft glow over the snow. "You ever think about what your life would be like if one thing had gone differently?" he asked. I nodded. "All the time." "Like, if you didn't come home for Christmas this year? Then I wouldn't be standing here freezing with a guy who made me spill his cocoa." He smiled. "Worth it, though." I felt something catch in my chest. Maybe it was just the cold. Or maybe it was the fact that his eyes hadn't left mine. I don't know who leaned in first, but when he kissed me, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks or swelling music. Just soft. Familiar, somehow. Like it was always supposed to happen this way. And yeah, we laughed about it later, how cliché it was. A kiss under Christmas lights. Small town boy comes home. Big city guy with a hidden soft side. The whole thing sounded like a bad holiday rom-com. But in that moment, it didn't feel like a story. It felt real. After the kiss, we didn't say much. We didn't have to. Mason offered to walk me home, and even though Maple Brook is the kind of town where nothing bad ever happens, I said yes. It wasn't about safety. It was about staying in that moment a little longer. We didn't hold hands. We just walked quietly, side by side, our boots crunching over snow-packed sidewalks, our breath hanging in the air like smoke. The silence between us was comfortable, and somehow more honest than words. At my parents' front walk, we stopped. The porch light was on. I could see the glow of the Christmas tree inside through the window. For a second, I wondered what they'd think if they looked out and saw us standing there. "You want to come in?" I asked, not sure if I meant it or if I was just afraid of ending the night. Mason hesitated. I should probably get back to my sister's. I told her I wouldn't be out late. I nodded, even though I didn't want him to leave. "Yeah, makes sense. But I'm glad you came out tonight," he added. "This wasn't what I expected when I came here." "Same." He smiled, gave me a small nod, and turned to leave. I watched him walk down the sidewalk, his beanie pulled low over his ears, his hands in his coat pockets. Something about the way he moved felt familiar already. Inside, my mom was in the kitchen, putting together another batch of sugar cookies. My dad was half asleep in the recliner, with a beer in one hand, and the TV playing some black and white holiday movie he wasn't really watching. "You're back late," my mom said, not looking up from her dough. "Ran into someone," I said, grabbing a cookie from the cooling rack. Her eyes flicked to me. "Someone?" "Just a guy. From out of town." That was all I gave her. That was all she needed. Moms have a sixth sense for these things. She didn't ask anything else, but I could feel her watching me with that quiet kind of curiosity that says more than words ever could. Upstairs in my old room, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. Everything was familiar and not at the same time. I hadn't felt that version of myself, the one who smiled without thinking about it, in a long time. Mason texted me around midnight. "You look good tonight. Also, I might be into black coffee guys now." I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then I typed, "Tomorrow?" Sent it before I could change my mind. His reply came almost instantly. Absolutely. The next day was Christmas. The whole house smelled like cinnamon and pine and my dad's too strong cologne. My aunts and uncles showed up around noon, and suddenly I was back in the role of grown-up child, getting my cheeks pinched and dodging questions about my love life. I checked my phone more times than I'd like to admit. Finally, a text came around 3. Meet me behind the bookstore at 4? Bring your scarf. It's freezing. When I got there, he was already waiting, hood up, cheeks pink from the cold. He had 2 paper cups of cider in his hands. "Merry Christmas," he said, handing me one. "I didn't get you anything. You showed up. That counts." We ended up walking again, this time behind the elementary school where the kids used to sled. The hill was empty, quiet, the snow untouched. "You said last night this wasn't what you expected," I said, breaking the silence. "What were you expecting?" "Honestly, I thought I'd be bored out of my mind. I came here because my sister needed help, and I figured I'd check out mentally and coast through the holidays. And now?" He looked over at me. "Now I'm trying to figure out how to not screw this up." That hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. "I don't do flings well," I admitted. "I'm not casual, if that's what this is." He shook his head. "Neither am I. Not anymore." We sat on the edge of the hill, cider cooling in our hands, and just talked. About everything. Old relationships, family stuff, what it's like living in a city that never sleeps versus growing up in a town that sometimes feels like it never wakes up. It didn't feel like a first date. It felt like catching up with someone I hadn't seen in a while, someone I'd somehow known before I met them. And when he leaned in again, this time slower, more certain, I didn't hesitate. The days between Christmas and New Year's always feel a little unreal. Like time hits pause and the world exists in this strange in-between space where no one knows what day it is or what they're supposed to be doing. It was the same in Maplebrook, except now every morning I woke up with this quiet anticipation in my chest. Because I knew I'd see Mason. We didn't plan anything formal. We'd just text, "You around?" or "Meet at the coffee shop?" or "Want to walk?" And we always did. We walked through quiet neighborhoods and down frozen trails behind the park. We sat in his sister's driveway after the twins went to bed, drinking spiked cider from thermoses and talking until our fingers went numb. One night, we ended up lying in the bed of his brother-in-law's pickup truck, bundled in blankets, watching stars through the frosty sky like teenagers. It felt reckless and pure and kind of perfect. And still, neither of us brought up the obvious. He lived in Brooklyn, I lived in Boston. He had a job that kept him traveling every other month. I had one that chained me to my desk most weeks. And yet, we just kept avoiding the subject. Because admitting it would have meant admitting that this, whatever this was, had an expiration date. One night, we were sitting in his sister's basement, just the two of us, a half-finished puzzle on the floor between us and some indie holiday movie playing in the background. He was lying on his side, one hand tucked under his head, his other hand brushing against mine absent-mindedly every few minutes like he forgot it was doing it. "I keep thinking," he said after a while, "that maybe this isn't supposed to just be a holiday thing." I didn't answer right away. "I mean," he added quickly, "I know we live in different places, and I'm not trying to pretend it's simple, but this feels worth figuring out." I sat up, heart pounding. "You're not just saying that because everything feels soft and sparkly and romantic right now?" He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that looked like it took effort. "No. That's the scary part. I'm saying it even though I know this town doesn't look like this in February. And we don't have Christmas lights to make everything easier. I still want this." My throat felt tight. "So what happens when you go back?" He looked down. "I don't know, but I'd rather figure it out than pretend this didn't mean anything." That's when I realized how deep in I already was. He wasn't just a cute distraction or some seasonal fling. He was someone I wanted to talk to every night, someone I wanted to share boring Mondays and ugly March rainstorms with. But I was scared. I'd been in something like this before. Not exactly, but close enough to know how easily distance can erode something real. And this, whatever we were building, felt fragile. "I don't do halfway," I told him. "I'm either all in or I'm not. He nodded slowly. Same. I took a breath. Then I guess we figure it out. He reached over, laced our fingers together, and for the first time, I didn't feel like we were running out of time. The night before he was supposed to leave, we didn't do anything fancy. We made grilled cheese sandwiches in his sister's kitchen after the twins were finally asleep, then curled up under a blanket on the living room couch. The tree was still up, but the lights were dimmed, and the only sound was the occasional creak of the old house settling. Mason rested his head against my shoulder. I don't want to pack, he mumbled. You can stay, I said half joking, even though it didn't feel like a joke when I said it. He tilted his head up to look at me. Say that again in July when the mosquitoes are trying to carry you off, I laughed softly. But there was this edge under the laughter, that feeling like the clock was ticking louder and louder in the background. We didn't talk about what tomorrow would look like. Not in a practical way. No, what flight are you on? Or when will I see you next? We just sat there, close, holding on to the moment like we could make it last longer if we stayed quiet. Around midnight, I drove home. We didn't sleep in the same bed that night. Maybe we should have. Maybe we were trying not to make it harder. The next morning, I didn't hear from him. I figured maybe they were rushing to get the kids dressed, or maybe he was running behind. I didn't want to seem clingy, so I waited. At 10:13 a.m., I got a text. Leaving in a few. Didn't want to make it heavier. Call you once I'm back in Brooklyn? That was it. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't bad. It wasn't cold. It was just distant. Careful. Like he didn't want to leave a mark, in case this whole thing wasn't going to be real after all. I typed, yeah, safe travels. Deleted it. Typed again, thanks for everything. Deleted that too. Finally, I just sent, call me when you get home. Then I put my phone face down and walked into the kitchen, where my mom was humming over a pan of scrambled eggs, like nothing had happened. The days after felt weird. I'd wake up expecting a text, or I'd think of something funny and instinctively go to send it to him. But then I'd stop myself, not because I didn't want to talk to him, but because I didn't know what rules we were playing by now. Was I supposed to wait for him to make the next move? Was I already too far in? He called on New Year's Day. I picked up on the second ring. Hey, he said, his voice quiet. Happy New Year. Yeah, you too, he hesitated. I missed you today. That was all it took. All the stuff I'd been keeping under the surface cracked open. Then why did you leave like that? I said. Not accusing, just asking. I felt like I'd imagined half of what happened. I know, he said. I panicked. I thought if I drew it out, it'd make it worse. But now I feel like I made it worse anyway. There was a pause then. I meant what I said. I want to keep this going. I took a breath. Me too. I just don't know how. We'll figure it out. I didn't say anything for a second. Then, you could come up in a couple weeks, stay with me. He didn't even hesitate. I'd like that. The first time Mason came to Boston, it felt surreal. I met him at South Station, standing near the Dunkin', like a cliché. He walked up with his weekend bag slung over one shoulder and this hesitant smile, like he wasn't sure if we were still allowed to act, like that week in Vermont had really happened. But the second I saw him, I knew. It hadn't just been the snow or the cider or the quiet magic of a small town at Christmas. It had been him and me together. Without the noise, we hugged and the hesitation melted. I brought cookies, he said, patting his bag. My sister made like 40 before I left. I don't have milk, I said, but I do have whiskey. Better. The weekend was simple, nothing like Maplebrook. We didn't have soft snow or festive lights. It was gray and slushy outside, and my apartment heater made a noise like it was dying every 10 minutes. But he didn't care. Neither did I. We went out for ramen, walked through the common with coffee cups steaming in our hands, watched a terrible true crime documentary on my laptop while sitting shoulder to shoulder on my bed. And when he kissed me again, it wasn't some holiday spark. It was just real, familiar, warm. Sunday afternoon came too fast. We stood at the T station, his train leaving in 10 minutes. I could feel that quiet dread creeping back in, same as the last time. "This sucks," he said, pulling me in close. "It does, but not enough to stop." He kissed me again, right there on the sidewalk, surrounded by people and traffic, and a guy playing Wonderwall off-key. And I kissed him back. After that, we found a rhythm. Every other weekend, we'd alternate. Sometimes I'd bus down to Brooklyn, where he'd pick me up in jeans and a hoodie, looking like the city belonged to him. We'd eat pizza on his fire escape, or visit his favorite bookstore tucked between a bodega and a laundromat. His apartment was tiny, barely room for 2 people and a dog, and he didn't even have a dog. But I loved being in his space. We didn't say the word boyfriend at first. Maybe we were scared to name it too soon, in case it didn't stick. But we both knew we were in it. Still, it wasn't always easy. There were weeks when one of us was too swamped with work to visit. There were nights we'd FaceTime, exhausted, both too tired to talk but needing to see each other's face. There were insecurities. What are we really doing? What happens in 6 months? But we talked through them, bit by bit. One night in late February, after we'd had a stupid fight over something small, me not texting back fast enough or him forgetting I had a meeting, he called me and said, "I don't want to fight with you about dumb stuff. I care about this too much." "Me too," I said, quiet. "I'm not looking for perfect," he added, "just real." And that's what we were building. Not perfect, but real. By the time March rolled around, I was waking up on random Wednesdays thinking about him. Not in some dramatic way, but in the way you think about the person you're getting used to having around. Like, "Oh, Mason would love this." Or, "I should tell him about that dumb TikTok later." It was becoming something I didn't want to live without. By the first week of April, the snow had melted. Boston was slowly waking up again. Tree buds starting to show. The common filled with people pretending 50 degrees was summer. I was walking home from work one evening, sun finally staying out past 6, when I got a text from Mason. "What would you say if I told you I was thinking about moving?" I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. "Moving where?" "To you." I stared at the screen for a full minute. We hadn't talked about this. Not really. We'd joked about how expensive his rent was, or how bad the NYC train delays were. We'd said things like, "someday" or "in another life," but never seriously. Never with this much weight behind it. "Are you serious?" I typed. "Yeah. I've been thinking about it for a while. My contract ends in May. I could freelance, be closer to you, see if this thing we're doing can actually be a life." I felt my heart do that wild, uneven thing where it didn't know whether to sprint or stop. I walked the rest of the way home in a daze. When I called him, his voice was steady, a little nervous, but steady. "I'm not asking to move in," he said. "Not yet. I just want to be in the same city. Wake up knowing I can see you without checking a calendar." "And if it doesn't work?" I asked, not to be pessimistic, but because I needed to say it. "Then at least we tried," he said. "But I think it will." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Okay," I said. "Let's try." He moved in mid-May. Not into my apartment. We weren't there yet, but a small place 2 blocks away. I helped him carry up a bed frame, a bookshelf, a single couch, and more plants than I'd ever seen a man voluntarily own. He joked that he picked the apartment because it was walking distance to both a good bakery and me. We didn't try to rush anything. We still had our own places, our own lives. But the difference now was simple. We were in the same place. We had Sunday mornings with bagels and coffee, weeknight dinners that turned into sleepovers, late-night grocery runs where he'd sneak candy into the cart and pretend it wasn't him. We still had fights, still annoyed each other sometimes. But the difference now was we didn't have to end those conversations with "talk to you tomorrow." We could fix things in real time, with presence, with closeness. It was early June when he called me home. We were standing in his kitchen, barefoot, eating leftover takeout from the box. I made some dumb joke about him finally learning how to load a dishwasher correctly. He smiled, leaned in, kissed me like he hadn't just done it the night before, and then he said, quietly, "You feel like home." That was it. Simple. Unpolished. Not part of any speech or grand gesture. But it hit me harder than anything else he'd said. Because somehow, since that first morning outside the coffee shop in Maplebrook, since the ruined hot chocolate and the Christmas lights and the quiet walks, we'd gone from strangers to something solid, real, tangled up in each other's lives in the best possible way. I don't know where we'll be in 5 years. I don't know what city we'll live in, or what new curveballs life will throw our way, but I know this. That Christmas, I didn't just go home. I found home. And it was him.